Good morning everyone. Welcome back to the new normal class of Practical Research 1. I am your teacher, Romel Palado. Before we are going to proceed to our topic, let us first have a sort of review of the past lessons. Last week, we discussed about finding answers through data collection. So this topic is composed of two lessons, Lesson 12 and Lesson 13. Lesson 12 talk about observation. So when we talk about observation, there is a direct contact with the researcher to the respondents. Observation is a technique of gathering data whereby you personally watch, interact, or communicate with the subjects of your research. So there are two types of observation. First, we have participant observation and non-participant or structured observation. From the word participant, so the researcher is involved in that particular research. While non-participant or structured observation, there is a detachment between the researcher and the respondents. So there are two methods of observation. First, we have direct observation that involves a direct contact with the respondents. While in direct observation, it may be through here, you observe traces of past events to get information or measure of behavior, trait, or quality of your subject. So, there are also methods of indirect observation. We have the continuous and spot sampling. Then, we also tackle about interview. So, when we talk about interview, it is a data gathering technique that makes you verbally ask the subjects or respondents questions to give answers to what your research study is trying to look for. So this interview have three types. Structured interview. So when we talk about structured interview, there is an interview schedule. While in an unstructured interview, the respondents answer the questions based on what they personally think. And lastly, we have the semi-structured. This is the combination of the first two types. Then we also have the approaches. We have individual interview. This is a one-to-one interview. Then we have group interview. This involves 3 or more persons being questioned. Then we have mediated interview that involves electronically. Then we also tackle about what are the steps in conducting interview. So the first step is getting to know each other. Second, having an idea of the research. Third is starting the interview. Fourth, conducting the interview proper. Fifth, putting an end of the interview, and lastly, pondering over interview afterthoughts. Then, since we are talking about interview, there should be a questionnaires you have being prepared. So, what is a questionnaire, by the way? A questionnaire is a paper containing a list of questions including the specific place and space in the paper where you write the answers to the questions. So, there is a questionnaire if you are going to interview. You have to prepare a lot of questions. Then that questions, in every questions, you will be prepared, or you will be a lot of space of the answer of your respondents. So this time we'll be discussing about the analyzing the meaning of the data and drawing conclusions. So before we proceed to our topic, may I present to you first our objectives for today's discussion. At the end of the discussion, you should be able to define data analysis, differentiate the steps in analyzing data, explain the meaning of qualitative data analysis, relate research questions with data analysis results, analyze and interpret thematically or theoretically organized data, explain the meaning of conclusion, justify a good conclusion section of a research paper, specify the contents of the conclusion part of a research paper, describe a good evidence to support a conclusion, and lastly, form a credible conclusions about your surroundings. Okay, data analysis. What do you mean by this? So, using a certain method of collecting and analyzing data, you get to gather varied world perceptions from different people. Through all these diverse opinions coming from a set of people, you are able to discover a certain idea or pattern governing the entire data collected. Geared toward a common theme, idea, or pattern, the collected facts and information are capable of guaranteeing evidence based on conclusions. So, factual data and logically collected ones are meaningful data to yield valid and credible conclusions. So, data analysis is very important because after gathering the data, you are going to analyze that data in order for you to decide whether to accept your hypothesis or reject your hypothesis. So what is the nature of a data analysis? It is a process of understanding data or known facts or assumptions serving as the basis of any claims or conclusions you have about something. You collect this data in many ways, just such as observation, interview, documentary analysis, and research instruments like questionnaires, tests, and etc. So the most common thing or the most common ways in gathering data are observation and interview. Then you have an instrument of questionnaire or either a test. So your primary aim in analyzing recorded data is to find out if they exist or operate to give answers to the research questions you raised prior to your acts of collecting them. So before you are going to gather data, there is a problem. After the problem, you are going to have an hypothesis made from the contains that is made from that topic. So in analyzing data, you go through coding and collating. So coding is your act of using symbols like letters or words to represent arbitrary or subjective data such as emotions, opinions, and attitudes to ensure secrecy or privacy of the data. So through this, coding is more on you are going to narrate that one. You narrate what being observed, what you have being interviewed. So you are going to write that one in a verb way. So meaning you are going to narrate that one. While collating, on the other hand, is your way of bringing together the coded data. Giving the data an orderly appearance is putting them in graph, specifically a table of responses. So after narrating that one, if there is already many ideas, then you can have a graph. So you are going to prepare a table wherein there is a responses of your respondents. Next, what is data matrix? When we talk about data matrix, the term data matrix is also used to name this table of responses that consists of table of cases and their associated variables. This data matrix is of two types. First, the profile matrix that shows measurement of variables or factors for a set of cases or respondents, and the proximity matrix that indicates measurements of similarities and differences between items. So let's differentiate the first two types. So first, we have profile matrix. It involves the personal traits of your respondents, while proximity matrix, it involves the measurements of the similarities or differences of your respondents. So under proximity matrix, if the measurements show how alike things are, it is called similarity matrix. If they show different, it is so called dissimilarity matrix. That is according to Denzen 2013. So what is a qualitative data analysis? So in a qualitative research, you analyze or study data that reflect the respondents' thoughts, feelings, attitude, or views about something. These are subjective data that are expressed in words, and these words serve as the unit of analysis in a qualitative type of research. You examine this subjective data to understand how related or relevant they are to your research problem or specific research questions. So that is why qualitative data analysis is very important, because you are going to decide if that given data is related or not to your specific research questions. So more on, in a qualitative data, there is words. You are going to express your data in words. If you are going to express that one in numerical, so that is quantitative, not qualitative. So you collect qualitative data through interviews, observations, or content analysis, and then subject them to data analysis. In your data collecting activities, you indispensably experience a lot of things vis-a-vis the sources of data, such as their sizes, shapes, ideas, feelings, attitudes, and so on. If you record this data through verbal language or graphic means, you get immerse yourself in a qualitative data analysis, not quantitative data analysis, for the latter deals with data expressed in numerical forms, according to Lader 2013. So, let's differentiate qualitative data and quantitative data. If it is more on words, it involves words, so that is qualitative. It involves numerical data, that is quantitative. So, qualitative data analysis is a time-consuming process. It makes you deal with data coming from wide sources of information. It is good if all the data you collected from varied sources of knowledge work favorably for your research study. But, ironically, such of these may not have a strong relation to your research questions. So, that is why data analysis is really important in conducting a research. Because maybe that answer or the answer of your respondents may not be suited to your research questions. Their answer may not be suited to your research questions. So, data analysis in qualitative research is a rigorous act of a thematic or theoretical organization of ideas or information. From the word organization, so the idea should be organized. Analyzing the data and synthesizing them based on one principal idea. Theory or pattern demand a lot of time and effort, let alone the methodical ways you have to adhere to in presenting the results as long written discussions containing verbal or graphical explanations of your findings. That is according to letter by 2012, Silverman and Lichman in 2013. So, it is really need to have a data analysis in conducting a research. We have drawing conclusion. So, conclusion is a type of inferential or interpretative thinking that derives its validity, truthfulness, or reasonableness from your sensory experience. So, when we talk about sensory experience, that is involves 5 senses: touching, seeing, hearing, tasting, and smelling. Things around you lead to a particular conclusion about each of those experiences. The results of your sensory experiences are factual data to support the truthfulness of your conclusions. So, from this definition, so you are expected to do your sensory experiences because that will lead you to a factual data and truthfulness of your conclusions. It will support your research topic. It will support your data because that is according to your sensory experience, your factual data. So in your research work, your next move after analyzing the data you have gathered is drawing conclusions. This makes you from conclusions drawn or deduced by you from facts statements resulting from logical thinking rather than from another assumption, prediction, or generalization are the only ones included in the conclusion section of your research paper. That is according to DeCello 2014. So, your research conclusions are composed of prediction, assumption, or generalization. That is according to DeCello 2014. Next, according to Thomas 2013 on page 38, any conclusion that you give about what you found out through your analysis of the data you collected is a warranted conclusion, which explains how the evidence or findings resulting from your data analysis stands to prove or disprove your conclusion. So, and by and large, the best kind of proof to back up your conclusion is one that is factual and logical or given by correct reasoning. So, how can your conclusions be valid? So, if it is based to your sensory experience, because sensory experience leads you to truthfulness and validity of your research. Downplaying much fewer excluding warrants from this section of your paper reserved specifically for stating conclusions about your findings makes your readers cast doubts about the credibility or genuineness of your conclusions. In order for your readers will not doubt your research topics, you should have prepared that one in a sensory experiences because it will lead to truthfulness, and validity of your research. So, I will point out the main point of drawing conclusion. It should be based on your sensory experiences. Next, we have research is about discovering things and engaging yourself in an exchange of theoretically supported ideas with those in the academic world. And you state all your discoveries in the conclusion sections of your research paper. But it is not merely making your conclusions visible in your paper, but also making this related with the claims or arguments of varied research studies and written works you've subjected to your RRL or review of related literature. Creating a link between your discoveries and your review of literature indicates the ability of your research paper to expand or enhance any existing knowledge about your research study. That is according to Harding 2013. So there should be a connection between your research problem, research question, gathering data, and your conclusions. That is according to Harding 2013. Next, according to Silverman and Morgan 2013 and 14, respectively, thinking of research as the means by which you, as a member of academic institution, debate or argue with others on some principles in any area of knowledge. You have to write the conclusion section on your own paper with conviction. Convinced of the validity of your findings to prove your conclusions, you must confidently state how your conclusions work to debunk or contradict existing theories, correlative assumptions, and published works. Conversely, your conclusions must be obviously provide sufficient evidence to justify their alignment with or its support for recent theories and research findings. Most importantly, your conclusions must present your judgment of the truthfulness of your findings and your assessment of their capacity to answer either positively or negatively your research hypothesis or research questions. So, as what I've said a while ago, in order for your research to be valid, it must be came from your sensory experiences because it will lead to truthfulness and validity of your research. So, if your research is positively reflect to your hypothesis, so you should create that one as a positive way. While if it is negative, so you also create that one in a negative way. You will not doing a doctor. You are not changing your respondents' ideas. You are not going to change what are the ideas or what are the numerical graphics or verbal intentions that you may encountered. So do not change your ideas or do not change the ideas of your respondents to your topic. So what are the outcomes of your research must be your outcome. So no need to change. So what are the pointers in writing conclusions? First, explain your point in simple and clear sentences. So do not make your sentence as a complex one so that your readers can easily understand what you are talking about or what you are going to employ or what are the words or what are the phrases or what you are going to extend to your research. Next, use expressions that center on the topic rather than on yourself, the researcher. So do not focus to yourself, just focus to your topic. Third, include only necessary items, exclude any piece of information or picture not closely related to your report. So, if it is not really related to your topic, do not include that one. So, it may have a vague ideas to your readers. When we talk about vague, that is really hard or unclear. So 4, have your conclusion contain only validly supported findings instead of falsified results. So you should have a supported documents to your research. So what are those supported documents? So that are the gathered data you have prepared or what you already concluded. 5. Practice utmost honesty and objectivity in stating the results of your critical evaluation of outcomes that you expect to support your conclusion. So, as what I've said a while ago, whatever the outcomes of your research must be written to your conclusion. Do not change anymore. So if you have any queries or clarifications or questions regarding our topic for today, you may contact me to my cell phone number 0930-680-829, or you may log into our learning site. So just type https guidef.sims.school/lcms. So God bless everyone. Stay safe. Stay strong. This is your teacher,